Welcome to the Boss Hog of Liberty podcast on the We Are Libertarians Network. I'm your host, Jeremiah Morrell, and as always, I'm joined by our co-host, Dakota Davis. And episode 43.
That's right.
Our Valentine's Day edition.
I'm excited.
Four guys in a locked room talking politics. It's perfect.
And no flowers.
And no flowers. I requested flowers, and we don't have them. It's gone terribly wrong already.
I apologize.
This is Lives in Rural Indiana. It's a show about folks who are involved in politics. We promise that our episodes are going to be a fun and an easy listen. We interview people who are influencers, elected officials, political experts, and people that we just find interesting. Sitting in as the other co-host today, we have Mr. Kade Koger, the returning co-host.
Good evening.
How we doing, sir?
Good.
Glad to be here.
Glad to be here, as always.
Fun stuff. And then on the other side, you have, you heard the voice, it's State Representative Tom Saunders of Louisville, Indiana.
Louisville, yeah. Well,
Henry County's own.
Thanks for having me.
So, do you have your own IMDb? You were in Hoosiers, right? That was like your first claim to fame was you're a cast member in Hoosiers.
I don't know if that was my first claim to fame, but yeah, I was a free cast member to Hoosiers.
Yeah. Well, I was
3 days for a minute and a half of the movie, I think. So.
You were in a crowd scene?
I was in the scene where they threw the coach out of the ball game and he turns it over to Shooter. I was two people down from Barbara Hershey, and Gene Hackman was a nice guy. Dennis Hopper was a nice guy. Barbara Hershey was the minute they said cut, she was gone.
She was out.
Yeah. But it was a neat time.
Oh, cool. So we spent the weekend. Dakota, Kade, and I. We had I guess we had our Valentines with our significant others.
We did earlier in the
on
week.
Saturday night.
Oh yeah.
We took care of that too. But Saturday night we all went out to Morty's Comedy Joint in Indy.
We did.
And Bowers, the guy that runs the place, took care of us. He had a table. We had a group of like 20 people, Tom, that went to this comedy show. And there was a guy named, is it Bert or Brett Kreischer?
It's Bert Kreischer.
Bert Kreischer. Mm-hmm. And he is the fellow that, if you ever saw the movie Van Wilder, it's loosely based on his life story. So we went to the late show for that, and it was a great event. Like I don't think there was anybody in the place that wasn't like their face didn't hurt after this guy.
Right.
My abs still hurt from laughing.
Oh yeah, it was a great workout.
It was a good time.
So yeah, it was. If you guys haven't ever heard of him, you can look up The Machine, and it's a story about how he was like a 7-year student at Florida State University.
Yeah.
7 years. Yeah.
7 years for a 4-year degree. And he thought he was taking Spanish, but it turned out it was Russian. And he tried to leave the Spanish class, and the lady's like, "No, I need to teach this class, and I will pass you if you just stay. If you stay in that seat, I will give you a C." And he just kept staying. And he wound up like a minor in Russian, and he wound up going over to Russia, and he joined the Russian mob on a train accidentally. It was just
the
story
starts.
And he made a fortune selling his life story.
Yep.
No, he didn't make anything off the movie at all. Yeah, somebody lifted it, and he didn't get it, but he's a stand-up comic now and doing all right.
Okay.
Yep. The story starts out, and he says, "This is a story of whenever I was 22 years old and how I joined the Russian mafia." And as soon as he said that, everybody that was in the comedy club just erupted in cheering and clapping, because I'm pretty sure that for the majority of the people that were in there, that video was the first time that they were exposed to Bert Kreischer. I know it was for most of the people that I talked to, and it was everything that I expected, and he did such a great job. I was so glad that we had the opportunity to go.
So did anybody ask him if they're meddling in our election?
We never came up. We should have brought Tom, and it would have been a good question, because he came. If he stayed, Dakota and Kade, they weren't able to stay for the late part, because it was like 2 in the morning, and I didn't stay to meet the guy. But they have drinks after, and you hang out, and some of the other comics came up, but he took pictures, and then by the time he got upstairs, it was like 1 o'clock, and I told Sarah we're done. But Danny got to meet him, and that would have been a good question if he had any intel on the election, and if the Russians really had anything to do with it. Oh man! So then we had the big LP meeting over the weekend too. Dakota presiding chairman.
Yes, it was a great meeting, really. We had a man by the name of Tom Firkenhoff who came and he met with us about running for the 6th District Congress. He was running as a Republican, so we did our little vetting of him beforehand, our libertarian purity test, I guess, and he passed with flying colors, and so he ended up sitting in on the meeting, and everybody, we talked about our business, we talked about our numbers, and I have here on the show notes that we gained at least one member in the past week, and that was Kade. We finally convinced Kade to join, and
You picked
Yeah.
a side.
Yep.
Yeah. Finally.
Welcome aboard.
I'm like a born again libertarian,
You s-
baptized in freedom and liberty.
you had changed
And
your
memes.
That was Dakota just trying to drown you.
that's exactly right. You had changed your political status on Facebook to libertarian conservative some time ago, after we become friends. And I was like, I'm gonna get him. He's gonna be a member of my county
Zeroed
party.
in.
Yep,
You got your target set.
and we got him, and that
What's
brings our total up to we have 18 members in Henry County.
It's
There's
like Amway. Now you just need to have Cade find 2, and
Yeah,
you find
yeah.
2 more, and you just keep growing.
Except I don't get any of the money from being on top.
Oh man, well, cool. That was fun, and we've got there's a big LP convention coming up for the whole District 6 area in March. So we'll get into that after once that's fully planned out. So sitting here with us, patiently waiting, is a longtime friend of mine. I've known Tom since the first year you ran for office. I tried to get my mom to dig it out, and we couldn't find it. But there's pictures of me back in high school walking around in my yellow Tom Saunders for state representative sweatshirt.
Did you not also have the goat?
I did have a goat, yeah.
Yeah.
W-
I ran on property taxes,
Yes.
and you and your sister stood outside the Smith building with a goat, if I remember right.
That was some friends of ours. That was
Oh,
yep,
you were
the
with
Fowles.
them,
I was
yeah,
I was
yeah.
probably I was a known associate.
Taxes got your goat. Saunders needs your vote. I remember that slogan.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was told every week before the show, so I was a little thrown off today by it being Wednesday and not Thursday. But I always go and see Clay Morgan, the barber, and he asked me who we were having on today because I don't know if you know this, but Clay is one of the co-hosts for Boss Hog of Liberty, and he asked who was coming on the show, and I said it's Representative Tom Saunders, and he said to make sure that I say hello from your good friend Clay Morgan.
Back to him. I did a little research on you guys. Saw that he is a co-host with you sometimes.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, we've had this is episode 43, and I think Clay's probably done 6 or 7 of them at this point,
Yeah.
somewhere in there. He was a guest on probably episode 7 or 8.
So that's it. You're a guest, then you come back as a regular.
And then you've got the welcome. You
Okay.
got the door open to you. Yeah, anytime.
That's how we built our way up in the world of politics to where we're having state representatives and people running for Congress on and saying, oh, Clay Morgan is a county councilman and he sits in the chair, and so then that gave us our credibility.
Okay.
Well, Tom's our 3rd state legislator, so we've got 147 left to go.
And several of those are retiring, so they probably won't. So I know you had Melanie Wright. Who was your other?
Senator Crider has been
Senator
on.
Carter. Okay.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep. We had actually booked Senator Crider when he was running for state or for
Congress.
this District 6 seat,
Yeah.
and then it worked out that we had something happened. He had to cancel, and we had to shift it around, and we were able to have him on, which is great anyway because he was able to preview the legislative session.
I appreciate you guys working with me on a Wednesday night. So
Yeah.
Thursday was taken,
It worked.
so
It worked
appreciate
out. Well, you guys are right in the middle of the session, so I mean, it's not a. We really appreciate you getting finding time to get here as well.
Well, I appreciate it. Last week was the halfway point, so we started hearing Senate bills this week, and we're out of there by the 14th of March by law. So we could get out of there a little earlier. It'd be fine with
You
most
just-
people, I think, including the people of the state of Indiana.
You can just kill the bills now and call it good, and then you can all go home, right?
Yeah.
You don't have to do anything from here. You're just.
It's supposed to be emergency things on the off-year election. We have to pass a budget in a long session, and so we had just as many bills filed in a short session as you have in a long session. So
We're hearing some things that the sound is not all that great, Dakota, coming out of the live stream. If we can work on that, I'm not sure if you've got a little bit of gain over there, you can help out. I think the podcast itself is going to be fine on the audio, but we'll try to do something here with the video, and you guys can give some feedback out there in the world if you can do it. Yep, they're saying that's much better. So
There we
mission
go.
accomplished.
Yep.
So Tom, let's talk a little bit about how you got to be a state representative. You started in Henry County. You're from here originally, right? You went to Tri or one of the preceding schools.
born and raised in Louisville, always had a love of history. If you want to hear the boring story,
Sure.
went to Louisville 11 years, graduated the first graduating class of Tri-High. I guess Dakota's a
Yes,
alumni there also.
I'm also a Tri-High graduate.
Yeah. When we went, the school wasn't finished, the lockers weren't there, and we still had the Louisville Spiceland Strong clique. There were 18 kids in my class up until the senior year. we went to 74. Matter of fact, I had 8 of them join me at the State House on Monday for a little tri-high class reunion that we hadn't
that's
had
cool.
for 40-some years. But as a senior in high school, we were right in the middle of the Vietnam War, and I wrote Richard Nixon a letter saying I was going to be in Washington over Thanksgiving vacation. Had a petition on the Vietnam War. I wanted to stop by and present on behalf of the students, faculty at Tri-High School. I was a student manager for the high school basketball team. And the Friday night before Thanksgiving, I'm in the shower getting ready to go to the ball game. My mom comes to the bathroom door and says, "You want it on the phone?" And I said, "Well, who is it?" "Well, they won't say." And I put a towel around myself and walked into the kitchen where the landline hung on the wall. And the gentleman said, "Tom Saunders?" "Yes." "Senior at Tri-High School?" "Yes." "One moment, please, the White House calling." And I kind of dropped the towel and sat down. And the special assistant to the president came on and said the president had received my letter and would receive me and my petition at 9 o'clock on Wednesday morning. And I thought right then and there that if an 18-year-old kid from Blissville, Indiana, can get the attention of the President of the United States, you can pretty much do anything you set your mind to. So,
Yeah.
And that's the reason you're sitting in a 3-bedroom podcast studio right now.
yeah. Look where I've come to. Yeah. From the shower to the bed. Yeah. So,
On Valentine's Day. of all
on
of it, yeah.
Valentine's Day. But you know, I've always loved it. I was kind of a puny kid, allergies and stuff. So in the summer, I had to do a lot of reading, and I like to read history and presidential history, and it's just been a love of
Yeah,
government.
we run into your son Patrick quite often. You know, seeing him out at. Actually, we saw him after the meeting at Montgomery's, and he mentioned that you are a huge history buff.
I write a decent letter, they tell me. For the last 17 years, I put a travel group together. It started out, it was Republicans, and we called it the Roving Elephants.
Mhm.
Well, then we had some Democrats want to travel with us, so the name of the travel group now is the Roving Elephants and the Wandering Asses. But we've been lucky enough to visit over the 17 years. We've met with both President Bush's. We've had lunch in church with President and Mrs. Carter. Lucy Johnson, LBJ's daughter, met us at the ranch in Texas. David Eisenhower, the grandson of President Eisenhower, son-in-law of Richard Nixon, met us at his grandfather's farm in Gettysburg. On the 50th anniversary of John F. Kennedy's assassination, we were in Texas, and I wrote a letter to the detective that was handcuffed to Lee Harvey Oswald when Ruby shot him. And he came and had lunch with us, had the white hat on. Tried my
that's
damnedest to get that hat and couldn't get it. But, you know, it's interesting to hear history from the people that lived it.
Oh yeah,
And,
absolutely.
and-
Yeah, I love history as well. What do you have a favorite period of time in history in U.S. or the world? Doesn't matter.
I like U.S. history. Now, I went last evening and saw the Churchill movie that's new. And so, you know, just my wife says I've got all this useless information in my head. That I was lucky enough to be invited to Washington last October. The Trump administration invited all 150 legislators and all Indiana County commissioners across the state for a one-day meeting. And Mike Pence, as chief of staff, was a friend of mine. So the night before we went to dinner, and he and I are both trying to outdo each other. And he said, "Now, when you go in the vice president's office tomorrow, I want you to sit down at the vice president's desk, and we'll pull the drawer out, and you can see all the signatures of the presidents that have sat at that desk." And he said, "But you'll notice that Harry Truman's signature's in that desk, but he dated that 1965. He wasn't president in 1965. And I said, "I think it has something to do with Harry Truman and Bess getting the first and second Medicare cards. And I think LBJ went to Independence and signed the bill." And I said, "I think that was in 1965. I bet that has something to do with it." And he said, "Damn." He said, "You're right." He said, when they went out there to sign the bill, President Johnson said to President Truman, "You didn't sign the desk." And Harry says, "Well, send it to me and I'll sign it." "Well, it weighs 1,000 pounds. "Well, send me the drawer." So, so some more useless information.
Oh, that's awesome. No, that is totally cool. So, you mentioned your Roving Elephants Club and your trips to Washington, and I think that you guys went to the Washington D.C. to watch Trump's inauguration. Did you have to fight off any people during the
We
riots?
did. It was It was different. I had 125 people that traveled with us,
Oh wow.
and
This is your roving
Roving Elephants.
Yeah, your
there
roving
was no
your rover group.
There was no wandering asses.
You
in
left
that
the asses
trip.
behind.
Yeah. So, and my wife and I received an invitation from the friends and family of the vice president. So, I mean, I thought that was a pretty big deal. So, on the morning of the inauguration, I got everybody on the metro, and I said, "Now I'm leaving you, and you're going to be on your own because Sue and I are going this direction." So we leave them at Metro Center.
We're going to the Naval Observatory.
Yeah. No, we didn't get there. We went by. So we go to a hotel. We go through Secret Service. They give us an armband. They put us on a bus. They bus us to the Capitol building. We walk in. Here's a section, a sidewalk, and another section. We're in this section, and as soon as we got there, somebody yelled, "Hey, Tom!" Well, it was the group I had just left in the metro station. so we didn't better ourselves any at all.
You were 3 feet ahead.
But the protesters and the next day, the Women's March, it was one of the ladies that was with us got knocked down by a mass protester.
Oh man.
And her husband punched the guy out, who happens to be an elected official from somewhere in the state of Indiana.
Oh my
Well,
goodness.
the protester went and got a police officer. And the police officer came over and he said, "This man says you struck him." And he goes, "I did. He knocked my wife down." And he told the protester, "Good. I can't hit you, but he can. So get the heck out of here." But we came back with the same number we left with, so
Yes, that's
that's always good.
Whenever I was trying to, trying to look up, the roving elephants because it was one of the things that we knew we wanted to talk about, and I hadn't heard anything about it, so I ended up looking you guys up, and looking up, I guess the trip to Washington D.C. and was there a news reporter that went along with you guys and kind of documented it?
There was a Fox News reporter that traveled with us. We had 2 buses. We started one bus down in Shelbyville, and another bus started in Columbus. And I'm sorry, I can't think of the name of the reporter right now.
It was,
yeah.
I don't remember now either, but it was a Fox News national guy.
Yeah, and they followed us, and then they wanted us to be live on the mall at 5 o'clock in the morning, and I said, "For 2 minutes?" I said, "That means we got to get up at 3 to get you there, you know." Oh no, it'll be more than 2 minutes, but it wasn't any more than 6, I know, but it was still something neat to do.
Yeah, that is really neat.
So your perspective on getting to the State House is a little bit different than most, where you're not an attorney.
No.
And you came up through county government, right? Or I guess even township government, right?
I started out as I got married in January of '75, and I became trustee in January of '75. And at that point, township trustees, you're in charge of fire protection, cemeteries, poor relief, and in the '70s you had commodities. So the government would send big blocks of cheese and cornmeal, and people were at my house at 6 o'clock in the morning, at 9 o'clock at night, and
so that's great. This is actually very timely.
Yeah.
So we saw the SNAP program as something the Trump administration is playing around with, maybe just like doing almost like a bark box and just mailing you your stuff ahead of time.
A lot of the stores are saying that it's kind of like a Blue Apron meal, which is the subscription service where the food is already prepared in the ingredients, and then you just cook it at home, and that is apparently the Trump administration's bright idea to kind of fix the SNAP issues that we're seeing. We've been talking, or I know last night on Facebook alone, I was involved in 3 different threads of conversation around this topic, and there's a lot of misinformation about it, and I'm kind of concerned that that honestly, because it's got Trump's name beside it, it's been tainted as just a horrible idea.
So over time, this process has changed. I assume this was a federal program or a state program that got administered through the townships.
right.
Your
And they
commodities
also
program.
had revenue sharing where they sent money back for fire departments, and it's also timely because last week in the General Assembly there was a bill to eliminate and consolidate townships of under 1,200 people, which
Yeah.
affected
3 or 4 in Henry County, right?
Yeah.
It was going to be like Franklin and
Franklin,
Dudley.
Dudley, Stony Creek, and Blue River, and then I had 9 of them that affected down in Rush County. So there was another legislator, and I was pretty passionate in I'm not saying there's not problems in the township, but what we were doing wasn't going to solve those problems. So.
Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely an argument to be made that that's the government that's closest to the people, and they don't have huge budgets, and they're the poor relief and the services that they're providing are, a lot of people argue that the problems with government are at the highest levels, not at the lowest levels.
Well, more than likely, somebody comes to a trustee for food assistance. We need somebody to help us pay our heat bill. Somebody's sick, we don't have medicine. It's a quick response. In most instances, the township trustees know their people. They know the people that need the assistance versus the people who are just milking the system.
Right.
Well, I think it's a pretty decent. Service. When it came time for me to run for re-election, my wife asked me not to do it.
Not to run for
Not
re-election.
to run for re-election.
It's probably you're making, I don't know, a couple $1,000s a year maybe, and
I think
you're up at all hours
I
of the
think
day.
I made $2,500 a year, and we hauled people to the doctor. We hauled their kids to school. I enjoyed helping people. I enjoyed it, but we lived in a 3-room apartment in Louisville. We had just gotten married. It was.
That's a lot.
So
A lot to take on from a.
Yeah, it would have been
from
basically
somebody
Dakota's
who-
age. Dakota's 22, so that'd be basically you'd be the
Yeah,
Henry Township trustee
And-
at this point in your
from-
life.
From somebody who I just got married too. That would be a lot of
So
stress.
you'd have people knocking on your door. You keep the cornmeal and the cheese in the basement because you had to keep it cool, and it's.
Wow.
So you went from that to then you worked in the courthouse as well.
Yeah, you want to hear that story?
Sure.
Well, Sue and I had been married for 7 years, and we didn't have any children, and she'd worked for a doctor, and I'd done some antiquing on the side, and we discovered we were going to have our first child, and we had insurance, but we didn't have maternity insurance. So I had helped the guy get elected county commissioner, and I went to him and I said, I need a job. And he goes, well, we're going to fire the courthouse janitor, but you don't want that position. And I said, well, how much does it pay? He said, well, it pays $8,000 a year in health insurance. And I said, well, if you don't mind, I think I'll take it. Well, the next morning, the county assessor called, Wayne Holcomb. And when you were a township trustee at that point, you were also the township assessor. So you took care of personal property, and you met the farmers every year to fill out the forms. And Wayne came to me and said, I hear you're looking for a job. And I said, yeah. And he says, well, we got a job in the assessor's office. I said, well, what's it pay? And he said, pays $8,000 a year in health insurance. I said, but I'd be stuck behind a desk all day, right? And he said, yeah. I said, I really appreciate it, but I think I'd rather be the janitor.
Get a little more freedom.
So I was the courthouse custodian for 5 years. They were hiring somebody to mow the yard and hiring somebody to paint. The courthouse clock hadn't worked in 20 years, and I just did that. I love old buildings. I'd go up and pedal with the clock and got the clock to work, and we planted flower gardens on the lawn. And
I do that job now. Once every May, I go out with the 4-H junior leaders, and we're out there mulching. I've done that for the last 10. I'm Tom's replacement on that front. Of course, at that time, it was a working courthouse too. The Justice Center wouldn't have been there, so
it wasn't there. No.
Yeah.
And it was mostly all women. So I had a female matron that helped me clean the women's restrooms, but everything else we did. But so, and I still involved in the party, and I was approached about running for county chairman, Republican chairman, and the guy that hired me.
Now, at that time, was that a job that it's just somebody's turn, or was it a knife fight to try to become county chair?
At that job, you ran the license branch.
Oh, you guys had political perks back in the day.
So you hired and fired the people, and if you made any money at the end of the year, that was yours. So some people came to me and said, why don't you run for county chair? And I put my name.
That's where you got the 33R1 license plate from. That's the roots of that.
That was a county chair's plate.
If I know it was dark outside whenever you pulled up, but the gray Dodge Ram that sits outside, the license plate on it says 33L1.
Well, and you had to pay extra for that too.
You used to pay us $40 for a vanity plate.
And see, the county chair used to control the first 100 plates, the 33R plates, and those mostly went to the precinct committeemen and such. So the night they were going to have that election, the guy that hired me said, now, if you go through with this, you're fired. I'm one of those people, don't tell me I can't do that, because I'll do it just to show you I can. And so I went upstairs, and I lost. And I came back down the big steps at the courthouse, and he was at the foot of the steps, and I handed him the keys. He says, "What's this?" I said, "Well, you said I was fired." And he goes, "You didn't win." He said, "I got plans for you." And he goes, at that point, Mr. Holcomb had cancer. And he said, "We're going to need to replace the assessor. And that's where I think you need to be." And I said, "Well, there's people in that office." And there were women in that. He said, "We don't need a woman in that position," which was kind of chauvinistic. So Wayne did pass away, and there were, I can't remember if there were 7 of us that ran and it took 9 ballots, or there was 9 of us that ran and it took 7 ballots.
So this was you were the precinct committeemen were filling a spot.
Yeah. I had to have 19 votes to win. I had 13 votes on the first ballot. I ran against the deputy auditor, the deputy treasurer, the deputy clerk, the president of the county council, and a school bus driver from up north, and I'm the courthouse janitor. I have the headlines of the Muncie Star the morning after I won. It says, "Courthouse janitor sweeps assessor's seat."
Oh man,
So-
that's the greatest headline.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And when I ran for the state representative, it became a political issue. You don't want to hire the janitor, but I could have went on welfare,
Right.
but I wasn't brought up that way, and it was a job. It paid the bills, and
So
That's awesome.
So since that time, you were elected to the state house, I guess, in '96. So you're
96,
20,
yeah. 22 years.
22 years. Yeah.
22 years.
You'll say
Yeah,
that
you
too
were.
loudly.
You were.
22 years, and you want to do it again. You haven't got it right yet, Tom.
I know.
You were. Were you sworn in? Let's see. How old was I?
So
Well,
you were
I was in '96. You probably.
Well, I
probably
was the first baby of the new year.
Oh,
in '96.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay.
So you would have been celebrating your first birthday when you got sworn in.
Well, in January of '96.
It would have been the election of '96.
Yeah.
So start of '97, you
No,
would have been
it was
one.
the election in '95, and I took office
Yeah.
in
Oh,
'96.
well, yeah, you've been in. Yeah. This is how long you've been in office.
Well, that's
And
a
I
good-
feel old too because
yeah.
I was working with your first campaign.
Yeah, that's putting it in perspective, isn't it?
Wait, you worked on his first campaign?
Yeah.
Oh my! I know you said that you campaigned for him. I didn't realize it was the first one.
Yeah, I was. I don't know. In '96, I would have been 13, 14 years old.
And see, in '96, I had been approached by. I became the county assessor. I became president of the statewide assessors association. I was going to be president of the Association of Indiana Counties, and would have been had I not been elected. So, I'm getting old. I lost my train. Where was I going there? But it was a job. Oh, I know. I had been approached by the Republican Party in Indianapolis a couple of times to think about running against Doug Kinzer, and I said Doug Kinzer's not beatable in Henry County, and I said I'd like to run for the job sometimes, but I want to win it, and I can't beat Doug Kinzer. And so when Doug resigned to take a position with Governor Frank O'Bannon, then I announced the next day I was going to run for the office. But it was held by a Democrat seat. They appointed somebody to fill his vacancy. So it was one of the top tiered seats in the '96 election, and we spent a lot of money.
Yeah, it's having run for the seat myself in 2012. It was my turn. Rex Bell had run a number of times, and it was I drew the short straw, so it was my turn to run for state rep. And I think I was a $4,000 or $5,000 campaign, and it was all $20 here and there. It's not easy, raising the money and going through the process. It's individual donations, and then it's also, I assume you have fundraisers you attend, and then some legislators raise more money, and you have transfers from the state parties and from different organizations.
It's changed a lot since the first election. Used to, other reps would send you money, and now the HRCC, the Republican Campaign Committee, as a member, I'm expected to give them money, and then the speaker decides where that money's going. So,
Okay.
but I think the first race we spent close to $100,000, and I couldn't fathom that. When they told me you've got to raise $30,000, and I'm thinking, there's no way in heck I can raise $30,000.
Now, if you look above your head right there, Jeremiah, you can even see it on the camera. You can see it says Morrell, and then it says State Representative District 54, and then like Kade Corner for this episode, it says Tom Saunders for State Representative. I don't know.
But you're ahead. You're still on top.
Is
Well,
this-
yeah,
is this-
it's my studio.
I think we have a really good spot for Tom's sign right next there by Mike Kreiders and Melanie Wrights.
We've got the Zach Lee District 54 sign is up there. I don't know. I don't know if I have any Brad Owens in here. We've had a few.
I have one of everybody that ran against
Do you?
me. Yeah.
Oh, really?
I had somebody.
It had somebody snag one.
Yeah.
That's why I couldn't find one over there in Louisville at the polling place. It was
No. They were never taken down before the election.
No. After when we go back out for the collection after the fact.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. So that was an interesting time. Still searching, but you've got a primary challenger this time. So you've got signs you're going to be putting out, and you're in campaign mode.
Yeah.
And elected. So you guys. The timing is different for you guys as you're running because you're in session until March, and then your primary is May 6th, 5th, somewhere in there.
Well, and if the November election difference than everybody else, if you're elected to county council or commissioner, you don't take office till the following January.
You guys start in November.
It's midnight. It's midnight on election day.
Right.
Because when I won that first time, the next morning, and I couldn't be county assessor, so I went to work, but I wasn't getting paid, and I didn't know what else to do. And some people came in to see me. They had a problem, and they said they'd went to see Dave Copenhavers, who I defeated. They went to see Dave, and Dave sent them to me, and I go, I don't know who I'm supposed to call, So it's so quick. And,
So how does that? You've been in this 22 years. It's a part-time legislature, right? So
that takes 90% of your time if you do it right.
Right, but you have to find a way to cobble it together. Like we had Mike Kreider on; he's recently retired,
right.
and then Melanie Wright was on, and she's a teacher, and she's got sounds like a good situation where the Yorktown schools or the Daleville schools, I guess it is, or work with her. How have you been able to make that work? When you transitioned out, you were full-time at the courthouse. Obviously, that wasn't going to jive. So how does...
Well, and they said, don't worry about it, Tom. There'll be all kinds of job offers. And, so you go out there. The first year is a long session, so it's January to April. It's getting to be the end of the year, the end of the session, and I'm thinking, what am I going to do? And the way they pay you, you can't live off. At that time, you couldn't live off of it because it didn't come in correctly. And leadership called me in. They go, what are you going to do for a living? And I go... I was hanging wallpaper on the side. I think I'll go home and hang wallpaper. Oh, no. And I go, what do you mean? No, well, you can't hang wallpaper. And I said, I got to pay the mortgage.
You guys have got an Elvis impersonator in the
Bruce
legislature,
Borders,
right?
Yeah.
So why can't you hang wallpaper?
Well, and when he was elected, they go, don't say anything about Elvis being in the building. And matter of fact, Elvis and I roomed together with two other legislators one year. We rented a house. But I was lucky enough that while I was in the assessor's office, I computerized the office. And the company that we had purchased the computer system off of, it just like it happened. He called me and he says, what are you going to do? And I said, I don't know. And he goes, well, why don't you come to work for us? And I go, well, I really don't know anything about computers. He goes, I don't need that. He said, you know every person in every courthouse in the state of Indiana. I need somebody to travel around, call on courthouses, tell them what we're doing right, tell you what we're doing wrong, and then you come back to me and report that. So I've been pretty lucky that I've been there 22 years. I left the company for 2 years, and then they hired me back. They give me the flexibility of being a legislator first.
Right.
I always felt guilty that I can't work 5 days a week. I missed the first 4 months of the year. Who wants to hire somebody like that?
Yeah.
But they've given me the flexibility to do it.
Yeah, you definitely have to find a unique relationship, a unique situation, either be self-employed or find a way to make it.
Or independently wealthy.
Or independently wealthy,
not, so.
yeah. That's tough from the Henry County seat, isn't it?
So during an election year, are there some things you look forward to as far as campaigning?
I try to do it all the time. I don't
Yeah.
at one time I had 27 parades a year. I buy Tootsie Rolls by the case. And I always tried to hit the chicken noodle
And
dinners.
you got a golf cart, too.
I got a golf cart. Yeah, that was my inheritance from my father. I always try to do the things so they can't just say they only see Tom when he wants my vote. So
Right.
sometimes they get tired of seeing me, I think. But my wife and I jokingly said, we can tell you who makes the best chicken and noodles. We can tell you who makes the worst chicken and noodles.
I think that's a really great philosophy to have, though. If you're a public official, I think I don't think anybody gets tired of seeing you. I think that most people would appreciate the fact that you take the time out of your day to do that.
Well, I think people, I mean, we get calls in Indianapolis and they go, why are they calling us? Because they don't know who else to call.
Right.
And if they got a problem, they want you to listen to it and try to help that problem.
So yeah, speaking of that, we had a friend of ours, Lisa Crosby, or Lisa Goldsberry. She had a constituent service thing, and this is probably a time for you to explain how that works. And you said it's a 5-day-a-week job if you're doing it right. She had a son who had got involved and was in the Pendleton Juvenile Detention Center, and had some disagreements with them. And he's out now and doing well, as I understand. But when somebody has a concern about what's going on inside of a state prison, or if you're trying to get something done with INDOT, or any of those are issues that you get involved in or you end up facilitating.
Right, and I'm kind of different. I'll make house calls. I'll use an example. There was a gentleman from Newcastle who had been in a prison, I think up in Peru, and he needed a course in order to complete his sentencing requirements. So he transferred to Newcastle, and after he got to Newcastle, they told him he didn't qualify for the course. So he writes me a letter. So then I go out to the prison to see him, and they said, "Do you want to guard in the room?" I go, "No, just put me in the room, let me talk to him." So he and I are in there talking, and about that time, somebody from the facility comes in, and they're not happy that he wrote me a letter, and she's laying him out, and he's talking back to her, and I said, "Just go find out and come back and tell me why he didn't qualify." And when she left the room, I told the gentleman, I said, "She was out of line, but if looks could have killed, you'd have killed her." So I said, "When she comes back in, you apologize, and let's see what we can do." Well, she came back in a little later and said, "You do qualify. I'm sorry, blah, blah, blah." So it took care of his problem. When I got ready to leave, I said, "I apologize." She said, "No, had you not come out here, we'd have never given it a second look." There was a lady in a nursing home over in Centerville my wife and I went to see last week that the state of Indiana has had in the hospital for 2 years. She needs 24. She's entitled to 22 hours of home health care assistance. She needs 24 hours of home health care assistance. She's paraplegic. She's paralyzed from the neck down, has been for 40 years, has lived by herself in her own apartment. She wants to go back home, but we won't give her 2 more hours of home health care assistance. But we've kept her in a nursing home and a hospital for 2 years at a cost of $1.3 million.
You're paying for that year-round instead of... Yeah.
So Sue and I go visit her last week, and she wasn't, in her opinion, getting the best of care. But she sent me a text the other day and said that since I'd been there, she was being bathed regularly, and her care was noticeably better. So, it helps sometimes to pay a visit. So.
Oh, that has to be an awesome feeling, too.
And that's something Melanie talked about as well, is that, that's most of the legislators we've talked to, it's this constituent service is the biggest, the most rewarding part.
Yeah, it is.
It's not the Abdul Hakim Shabazz is beating you up too much.
Well,
so
go ahead.
I was going to just kind of transition into some of what's been going through this year, and I guess bills you carried. We'll start with that, the things you had, and where they're at, how much transferred, what you're happy made it, what didn't make it. Start there, I guess, and we'll get into the other major issues.
I guess kind of to start it out, we did have a question from one of the viewers on the Facebook Live named Kelly Riggs about a bill that you co-authored. It was House Bill 1369 that deals with teacher licensing for military spouses, and she wants to know that how that's going to differ from the existing permit process.
69, not 96. I think you looked up the wrong bill, Dakota.
Oh, I did? Oh,
yeah.
Crap. Oh, you're right, I did.
You didn't have a teacher licensing bill, did you?
That's
I was a co-sponsor. Somebody's asked me
dyslexia.
to sign. Did it pass? See, I can't tell. I don't know if it even got to hearing. We were allowed to introduce 5 bills.
Right.
I introduced one on, exempt property. I want them to study the effect of exempt property on property taxes. When I left the assessor's office here in Henry County, we had like $50 million in assessed valuation. That's 5 times that now. And that means that what they're not paying for, you guys are paying more. And I don't want to tax the church. That's the first thing they say. Tom's after your church. I'm not. But churches and not-for-profits own shopping centers and tillable acreage and apartment buildings and condominiums. And I just want those properties to pay for the services that they receive.
Okay, so this this bill, the 1369, this is the right one. It deals with unnecessary and unused law reports, and it did pass. The yay votes were 87, excused were 12, and not voting was 1. So, of the people who were willing to vote, it passed unanimously.
And I'm sorry, I can't tell you what that is.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
If she wants to send you a contact number, I'll be sure and check on that in the morning, and we'll give her a call.
Absolutely, sounds good.
All right. So then, how about your other bills that you had?
And then I had one to study. Unfortunately, only one of them got to be assigned to a committee, and that was the one on county ethics for local officials and requirements that when a wind company came to town, they had to notify the public they were interested in doing business in the community and what they had to do to them. But unfortunately, I didn't get a hearing either.
Okay. So you had that the way that process worked, it got assigned, but then the chairman of the committee said it ran out of time or chose to pocket it.
I'll let you tell me what happened here. The bill got assigned to local government. The local government chairman said that he would hear the bill. I had a bill last year basically on the same subject, and the chairman of the utility commission said, I'm going to hear that bill on my committee. So he heard my last year's bill, took testimony on it. I told the committee, I'm going to amend Tom's language that's in, I think it's 1214 in local government. I'm going to amend that into this bill next week. Stay tuned. So then he told the committee chair that was going to hear my bill, you don't need to hear it because I'm going to amend it into this bill, and then it was never done. So you tell me what happened.
They forgot about it. Well, there's still time, right? Until they're all done, you've got possibly got an avenue to get something back in.
I talked to the committee chair today about, nothing's dead until we get out of there. So if I can amend that language into a bill and that passes one house, then it's still alive for me to try to do something with. So.
Yeah, so Kelly followed up. It was a regulation of confined feeding operations, which the scoring system Henry County had was something that was pretty big.
I didn't do that this year.
You didn't have anything on that one this year?
No.
Okay. All right, so there's nothing pending on that one.
There we go.
All right, and then you serve, I guess you're on the local government committee?
I'm on local government.
Roads
I'm
and
on
Transportation.
Roads and Transportation, and I'm vice chairman of local government relations.
Okay.
So what does the local government committee deal with?
Well, we hear legislation pertaining to anything. I mean, some of the things we've been talking about this session have been drainage, county drainage, township assessments, township government, basically anything that deals with local government.
Okay.
One of the bills and that committee meets on Thursday morning at 8:30. Tomorrow we're talking about advisory board membership and how many staggering their terms. And
right now you've got a township advisory board's got 3 people, and you elect them all at the same time for 4 years at a time, right?
Right.
So you get a chance that you lose all your institutional knowledge at one time. You could have a whole new board and a brand new trustee.
So if this bill passes, in the next election, the person with the most votes will have a 2-year term, and then the next person is elected 2 years after that, and so after that period it'll be staggered.
It'll stagger out.
Yeah.
Sometimes when you move that stuff around, it gets goofy.
It does.
Darren Jacobs got to go 7 years between elections because they forgot they had to run in Spiceland last time.
Small towns are really not partisan, and they don't have elections very often.
Oh.
We like to give Darren a hard time about that, but he's a good guy.
He's our token socialist, and he's listening. He's working today on a Saturday somewhere, and he's laughing at us right now.
So you're on those committees, and one of the things I put on the show notes because I thought that this was pretty cool, considering you are our house representative, was that you were in 2014. You were legislator of the year, selected by the Indiana Conservation Alliance for creating the Sustainable Natural Resources Task Force.
Yeah.
So can you explain a little bit about what that task force is?
It was to look at how we're preserving and using our natural resources. There's a big controversy right now about saving yellowwood forest down in
Right. Yeah, you see the signs everywhere.
Unfortunately, we're not saving yellowwood. We tried to do some amendments last week to do that, but there again, it's, do you want your party to make your governor look bad? So, no, we don't. So that didn't get anywhere.
Right.
I was also in 1998. I was the National Legislator of the Year.
National.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And that was only
After
see, that
2
would've been your
years.
After
second
2
term,
years.
yeah.
Well,
2 years.
National Freshman Legislator. of the
Oh,
Year.
all right.
That was it was a big honor. I think it was more political than an honor. It made John Gregg very mad. I'll tell you that.
We get to know
John
John Gregg a little
Gregg,
bit. When Rex was running for governor,
Yeah.
I got to watch one of the debates with his wife. We were standing in the side stage, and they were very nice to us as well. I felt like we were going to have a good governor, no matter how it turned out. We were going to do okay this time.
I consider John Gregg a friend. If you ever read his book, he'll tell you he threw everything at me, including the kitchen sink. But we turned out being friends.
He wrote about you in his book.
He did, yeah.
Wow. What was your chapter about?
Well, he talked about different legislators, and he talked about me. And the first time I ever met John Gregg, he wasn't very happy to see me because I just defeated the 51st Democrat, which threw us into a 50-50 split. So I was told right then and there that I wasn't going to get anything. I could go home and hang my hat on and enjoy the ride. And that's pretty much the way it happened, too. So, but, when I got there, the party in power controls everything. So, like the Democrats aren't getting to do anything right now, the Republicans weren't doing anything then. So I made friends with Tiny Adams, who was a freshman Democrat from Muncie. And if I could convince Tiny it was a decent idea, then he would run with it.
And then you'd have a shot.
If you don't care who gets the credit for it.
Was Tiny? Did he work at General Motors, or
He
UAW
was
ties?
Yeah, somewhere. And he's since passed,
Yep,
unfortunately. But
I knew that. I think he worked with my dad.
he
at New
came,
Hampshire Gear
he
up
came
there.
to my house for Christmas one time, and a couple days later he says, I got in trouble for going to your house. And I said, well, first of all, who told them you were there, and what does it make, it's...
The NSA is just too strong, Tom. They're spying on you.
Even then, I guess.
We get so much more done if you have a relationship with the person. We don't have it as much, because when I first got there, we'd debate at night, but then we'd all go out to dinner someplace, and we'd go bowling, we'd play basketball, we'd race go-karts, and you had an interaction. You got to meet people as people. You learned where they came from, their family, their kids, and it was easier to work with them. We don't have those relationships anymore.
Right. I think that that kind of was one of the things whenever the McKinsey for Congress people were here, and Brad Kloppenstein came with them, and he was, he is lobbied in the legislature about alcohol laws and things, and he's like, one of the biggest things about being in the legislature and being involved in this is just knowing like seeing the people face to face on the regular, talking, and I think that he brought up, if you go to the same church with them, your kid's playing the same little league team, and I think that's we heard it from him, who is lobbied in front of in the state house, and now we're hearing it from you, a actual legislator, and how it works on your side too, working across the aisle with people. I think that's really neat. I think that's a really cool thing to hear you say.
Well, and you hear that in the olden days in Washington, they didn't come home every weekend. They went to church together, the kids played together, they had a relationship together, and now the dysfunction in D.C., I think, has to be part of the problem.
Yep, absolutely.
And I said, it's bad enough to get called to the governor's office on the carpet. I can't imagine being called to the president's office.
Oh, yeah.
How often do you get called to the governor's office? By governor. We'll start with the beginning.
Well, under this governor, not any, and Mike Pence didn't call me. Mitch Daniels called me on the carpet a couple of times. I mean, I was the only Republican that didn't vote for the property tax caps. Not that I didn't think.
Well, they were questionably constitutional, and then they threw them in there.
Well, it was a good campaign slogan, in my opinion. And your taxes, they said your taxes would never go up. Well, they have. How many of you? We didn't cap the assessment. We capped your 1%, 2%, and 3%. So.
Right.
And the governor called me downstairs, and you're going to vote for this. And I said, I'll vote for the caps if we don't put them in the Constitution until we see what it's going to do to local government. Because unfortunately, nobody wants to pay taxes, but they still want the services, the fire truck, the police, and the jail, and the courts, and the first aid unit. And,
I think that's one of the things as a libertarian, what we talk about all the time, because Jeremiah and I both say that we're pragmatic libertarians. We're not the yellow and black anarchists that have moved to New Hampshire or anything. So we accept the fact that there are some things that government has a responsibility to do, and that it has to be paid for somehow.
Mm-hmm.
So something else that came up today, are you familiar with the Citizens of Henry County group on Facebook? Has this made your radar yet?
I don't do Facebook. I'm sorry.
There's about 6,000 picketers people with pitchforks that argue about things on the internet. But it provides for a lot of good content. It's mostly Henry County
I
folks.
will tell you, there was a time in my life when I was the topic of that Facebook about 12 years ago, and people would tell me I needed to read it, and I'd read it, and it'd make me mad, and I thought, I can't live if I read this.
I can't do this.
I just quit.
So
I understand.
There was you had a bill dealing with drainage and how county tiles and those sorts of things work, right?
Right.
So and this was the big topic today. So I wanted input or try to help me understand the process. You're here today, so we'll talk to you about it. But I don't know if it's supposed to be a surveyor issue, if it's a commissioner issue, if it's a property owner issue, what it is. In the Westwood area, there's a handful of houses that are built on Greensboro Pike,
Mm-hmm.
and they've got flooding that comes out of a farm field to the west, and then these guys have got water coming across, and they've got this flooding that happens. The house has been there for 80 years, 100 years. So I don't know if it's a county drain tile issue, if they're supposed to be dealing with that, or are they supposed to be talking to the surveyor? Do they need to be working with the property owners to try to get new tile put in? What's supposed to happen there?
Well, unfortunately, in the past when we've had construction in Henry County, they haven't always done the very beginning.
I live in White Estates, and I'd love to know what IDEM's doing with my neighborhood.
Yeah, and that's one of the examples I was thinking of when you said it. I mean, we've got a pretty decent hands-on surveyor in Henry County with Steve Rust, and it's the commissioners are the drainage board, so it's. They gone to the commissioners' meetings? Have they talked to the surveyor?
I think they've talked to the surveyor, and it's kind of it is what it is situation.
Well, it is because there's no money.
Right.
Unless that drainage is under assessment. I don't know if it is under assessment. If it's not under assessment, they have to notify the property owners and have a hearing and put it under assessment. And, they can go out and bond for it and do it. And then but you got to pay a yearly tax.
The people that benefit from the drain then pay back on their property taxes, I assume.
Yeah.
So that's the route that they have, basically, is if they don't have a county tile, they can have one installed, they can bond for it, and then...
If the commissioners will, agree to take it in, I guess I need to go home and read that. It's kind of hard to make a recommendation without...
Well, you've got people, people will go out there and they've got, you feel bad. You've got pictures of, a field that's flooded and it's hitting their house. And you're like, well, I honestly don't know the answer.
And we're doing so much ditching and putting tile in, which is making the water run away quicker. And we're always supposed to have these
It's
waters.
going to be, a lot of it's situation dependent too. So it's going to depend on soil types. So, where it's at and the topography of just that general area. I mean, there's some soils, it doesn't matter how much tile you throw at it, it's really not going to drain that well.
It's not going to go down. It's just going to stay on top, and it's going to flow. It's going to flow anyway.
Yeah, Kade Koger is is the Boss Hog of Liberty soil and tile expert.
I know I've been to Middletown a couple of times on 236, I think it is, where we've been having a lot of flooding.
Yeah.
And that was somebody put in a lake without a permit years ago and ran the tile under the road, and tiles collapsed, and now the state's going, well, it's not our responsibility, it's the county's, and he said, she said. So.
Yep.
It's time to put in a big box culvert and call it good. So, and then, any idea what's going on with the White Estates issue with because they were in the news last summer where IDEM was going to fine the Henry County. Do you know if there's any progress there at all?
And nobody's approached me about that. So, and I try not to go to the county meetings and voice my opinion because I'm not elected to do that.
Right.
There's been instances where I've been asked to attend and I have, and I don't want to say anything. And then kind of get pushed into saying something. And you can't win on a few issues that we've been debating. You mentioned CAFOs a while ago. The wind, you're going to make some people happy and some people mad, and you just try to do what you think's best for them.
Is there anything, do you think those are issues that just need to be county level and let the commissioners and the zoning processes take place, or is it something where you think there needs to be state action?
There are counties that don't have any zoning, so I think there needs to be a limited state statement on our policy. And I always said, I like my milk and I like my bacon. I don't want to be a hypocrite, but it's all about location, location, location. And I went to it's probably been 5 years ago, I went to a meeting at the courthouse. We were going to redo our CAFO ordinances. And I told them, I'm not saying anything. I'm in the back of the room. They had a guy from Farm Bureau and a lady from the Department of Ag. And the guy from Farm Bureau starts out, you people that move into the country and then complain about our odors and our farming methods, and you people, and the unfair tax system, because we subsidize you people. Our property doesn't require the same services that you people's houses do. And I sat there for about 45 minutes, and then I raised my hand. I said, excuse me just a minute. I said, in my particular situation, the guy moved in within a half a mile of my neighborhood. I didn't move into his. And I said, you talk about the unfair tax system. I said, my property is assessed at market value. Your farm ground is productivity minus obsolescence and depreciations and soil types. And I said, you might be paying on a value of $1,750. And I said, yeah, you don't use our services, but you do use our roads to get your product to market. And I said, the days of a tractor and a couple of wagons is long past. You're using 18-wheel semis. You're tearing the hell out of the roads while you're doing it. And I said, so let's just bump your ground up to market value, $9,000 an acre. And we'll be satisfied. And I was a little hot. And he goes, sir, you really need to take that up with your state representative. And I said, well, sir, I am the state representative. And the room went wild. And the next day, Farm Bureau called and said, I guess we sent the wrong guy to Newcastle.
You didn't send the guy that knew the local market.
It's all about being a good neighbor. That's what.
Yeah, I think everybody can afford to be more kind nowadays, but a lot of that with the CAFO issue, of course, I'm a farmer, so I see it from my side. I understand, neighbors, a lot of the times they have real concerns, totally understand their concerns, and there's just sometimes, like you said, location. You're going to have a good location, you're going to have bad locations. There's places that make sense to put something like that, and there's places that don't make sense to put, CAFOs up. And I think the more we can come to a better solution to problems like that. What I'm looking at as a farmer myself, I'm fourth generation, so my family's been here in this county for a long time. And as a family grows, as a farm family grows, I've got two brothers, an older and a younger brother. And since my dad's been farming, he's been looking at options for us. We all want to farm. So you're looking at splitting a farm 3 ways. And having options, so we're pretty multifaceted. My farm is we do row crop, and then we have produce, and then we also have livestock where we raise cattle, just small scale. But having options to where we can expand has been the big thing. And
the same ground needs to pay for three households instead of one.
Exactly. And and I've got 2 kids now. My older brother, he's got 2 kids, and my younger brother, he's got his first child on the way. And we're all getting to the point now where we're looking at the same thing as my dad has looked at.
Yeah.
And having that option to expand, granted, we do everything we can to keep our neighbors happy. And where we're at, we've got a pretty good, record with our neighbors. I feel like our neighbors get along with us pretty well, and we do everything we can to accommodate them. And I think, putting things like that in areas where they make sense is really the biggest thing.
And most operators are good and courteous neighbors. It only takes one.
Yeah.
And it gives everybody a bad name.
And then the CAFOs thing itself, it kind of has it's like a good food, bad food kind of argument. It kind of comes down to, like, people think confined feeding operations are just, bad for the environment. And I think if they're run correctly, then they're not what people think that they are. It doesn't pay to be cruel to animals. It doesn't pay to have animals that are unhealthy. And I really think that a lot of it is people don't have firsthand, experience on a farm to understand how much time we actually do spend with these animals and how much we do really care, not only for the animals but for our neighbors and everybody around us as well. Because
I see you post pictures all the time on your Facebook. Just the other day you were posting that you had calves and how
we had
excited
our
you
first
guys were about
calves
that.
here this week. So we've been working on that, and like I try to post stuff, periodically. I like to keep people kind of in the loop of what I'm doing because not everybody knows a farmer.
Yeah.
So I like to be that person that people can get a hold of and say, how does this work? And I can give them an honest answer. And and show them exactly how we do things.
I got to make a correction. You said I had a bill on CAFOs, and I said no.
Right.
Representative Sue Arrington
Yes,
from Muncie
Muncie.
had a bill, and she asked me to be a co-author. So yes, I did sign off on a co-author, but I wasn't the author of the bill.
Okay.
Didn't mean to misrepresent that. Forgot all about it until we were talking about the issues.
Gotcha. All right. So the
And that bill didn't go anywhere.
that would yeah. Okay.
And also considering that, I think Dave Ring from up in Muncie, they're fighting a CAFO right now. I think in the northern part of Muncie, around Eaton.
Oh, Delaware County's looking to get one too.
Yeah.
Well, and part of the problem is NDOT. If you meet 3 requirements, they can't.
DNR or IDEM.
IDEM.
You got all these acronyms
Yeah.
in everything.
They can't deny a permit. So what, if I remember right, what Sue's bill did was, if there was a problem, then they would have the right to refuse a permit. And just you've got some of the same bad operators building multiple facilities, and they'll tell us there's anything they can do to regulate them. So we were just trying to give them some teeth if they thought, but there's no.
Would that bill require a different permit?
No, it was just the same permits, but if you'd had so many complaints against your
Like a point system.
yeah,
Yeah.
that they could deny a permit.
So it was operator specific, giving the permit office the ability at the state level to do something different.
Okay.
All right.
So I apologize. I didn't mean to. Whoever that lady was a while ago, she'll think I lied to her. It wasn't my intention.
Well, we'll reach out to her and let her watch the whole thing.
If we're each allowed 5 bills,
Right.
but then we've always been asked, you find a Democrat, if you're a Democrat author, find a Republican going with you or vice versa. And she came to me and asked me to be a co-author. When Phil Flum was the state rep, he and I could manage to get some legislation on CAFOs passed out of the House, but when it went to the Senate, it always hit a dead end. So
You guys have had the switch, so some of the bigger legislation pieces and things that have been in the news. Medical marijuana went out, and it was I guess that made it out of the House, and then so did the CBD oil
CBD,
correction.
yeah, and
And they were both
industrial hemp.
and industrial hemp, and were they all unanimous out of the House side? Pretty
close. I don't think anything. Most of our bills are bipartisan. There's just a few that the education usually are partisan issues, but the hemp, we heard testimony, and I saw parents bring their kids in who suffer from epilepsy or some kind of seizures, and they're telling us how the oil is able to cut those seizures down to almost none. And, you can't get high from that oil.
Yep.
The Attorney General was saying it was illegal, so we were trying to clarify it so we could help these kids out if we need to. And the hemp, they're projecting for a farmer, that could be a cash crop for you down the road.
Like I said earlier, it's be another option.
And that was a letter, kind of an open letter. You were kind of lobbying Senator Lysing a few months ago, or a few weeks ago, when it passed out of the House.
Yep.
And the anticipation was it might end up on her, in
chairs,
her committee.
She chairs ag.
She chairs ag, and I think it wound up in front of Commerce or Technology Committee.
Yeah.
But I think she's on that committee as well. But yeah, it may not have as an easy a path over there as it did on the House side.
But that's something the governor wants. So usually when the governor wants something and your party's in control, he gets what he wants.
All right. So what are going on this? I guess it was House Bill 1214, which dealt with the CBD oil and the industrial hemp. But what are your views on medical marijuana? I know that Jim Lucas, who we follow really closely, Jim Lucas really closely, and he shared an article today that's actually that was about a lawsuit against Jeff Sessions and the DEA.
So at the federal level.
Yeah, at the federal level, but basically took him. There was a lawsuit that kind of dealt with them trying to crack down on medical marijuana legalized in the states, and I know that previously, whenever we've talked about these issues, such as the industrial hemp issue, that ended up passing. It was a fear of federal pushback. So I guess that this judge's ruling saying that doesn't stand. It kind of makes that non-existent anymore.
Well, you're not going to see in Indiana the legalization of marijuana for a long time, I don't believe. But I do think you're going to see the states try to introduce legislation that will take a look at the research on medical marijuana and see if it is something that helps, and if the federal government, fights us, and there are state rights, but.
Well, you're getting to the point now where it's a tipping point of darn near half the states have got it either, I think about 8 or 10 have it full on, no regulation at all. And then you've got 20 or so or 25. Every state around us has medical.
29 states have medical marijuana, which is what we pointed out during the governor's State of the Union address whenever he said that 29 states have they don't have a sales tax on software, and he thought that since 29 other states have it, then that's obviously a sign that Indiana needs to adopt it. But he's against medical marijuana that 29 states have. Like it's just kind of a funny thing to point out.
Picking and choosing, isn't it? It's like,
yeah.
My dad always used to say, if the kids would jump off a bridge, would you follow them along? So, I think it's hard when they legalize marijuana. I think that's when the federal government's getting in charge, because it is hard. You go to Colorado, you're going to bring it back with you. Or at least the brownies.
So we have this PACE team, and every time they're the state police, I get, because of this media empire we've started over here. The state police email me their press releases now, so I get it.
Oh, okay.
And then I'll be like, well, the state police, the PACE team got another set of tourists that were going from Colorado, from one legal state to another. They're going from Colorado to D.C. across I-70, and they came through Henry County, and all those guys are sitting in the Henry County jail because they had 10 pounds of.
Don't you wonder how they know which cars to stop?
Oh yeah,
they're uniquely skilled.
I've said before that we watch live PD all the time, and it's crazy what these guys get stopped for. Like smuggling meth inside their doors, like 29 pounds or something, and they got pulled over for having 17% window tint. Like, but
you almost wonder if there's not somebody squealing on them somewhere.
Oh yeah.
So a couple other things that I wanted to hit up on: cold carryout or Sunday sales. Those two issues, hand in hand, you got us halfway there, Tom.
For this year, yeah. And the carryouts were the filling stations, convenience stores. They had a luncheon in the atrium. There were 4 lunches taking place in the building today. You could go with Motorsports, Red Cross, convenience stores. I forget who was up on the other 4, but
I saw somebody giving blood today. I think Mike Kreider was giving blood today with the Red Cross group.
Yeah, and they give you lunch afterwards.
There you go.
They were lobbying for the cold beer sales, and that's probably going to happen.
The Red Cross was?
No. The convenience store. The Red Cross might have been too if you had orange juice in the packet. But the Sunday sales, we're slow in Indiana. It takes time, but it was a question I asked in my survey, and I think it was like 73% wanted Sunday sales.
Yep. Yeah, I'm surprised it wasn't more than that.
My only concern is, we have a gentleman here in town. He owns 3 of the carryouts in town, and all his employees have to be 21 years old. They have to go through so much training. He can't sell anything but liquor. He can't even sell cold pop. It has to be outside.
Well, that's next. Let him sell cold pop.
Well, but that's it has to be a fairness issue. I mean, and I have a 5-year-old granddaughter. If I wanted to go in there and get a 6-pack, I can't take her inside the store.
Right.
But at Christmas time, I could walk in Walmart, and it was right there in the aisle. And, and the employees don't have to be 21. They don't have to go through training at the big box stores. So if we're going to do it, it needs to be fair across the board for everybody that's involved, I think.
Right.
I mean, I went to Kroger at Christmas time. The guy in front of me had 2 bottles with the lock caps on them. The kid that was sacking groceries came over and rang it through the cash register, went back to sacking groceries. The kid that was ringing it up, who couldn't ring it up, unlocked the caps on top of the liquor. And I go, well, which one of you are 21? Well, neither one of us. So
that's what happens when you've got a law that's 80 years old and you're trying to you're trying to uncobble it
and protect people's turf.
Yeah,
that's part of the problem.
All right. Yeah. So another big thing we kept hearing about over and over and over again in the governor's race when I was working with Rex's campaign, everybody wanted rural broadband and wanted to do rural broadband, and we got people out here in rural Henry County that can't get anything.
Yeah, that was another big issue on citizens of Henry County.
Is that something that the state government needs to be involved in, or is it you choose to live out there in the farm ground, and if you want internet, then move where Metronet is in the city?
Well, but part of that problem is you got a state government that's requiring you got to do all this stuff online. So if we're going to require you to take your driver's license online, or you renew your registration on your car online, or you do this online, they ought to be able to get online. So I do think we have some responsibility there. And there is a bill going through the House. I think it passed out of the Senate. It's coming to the House that's supposed to try to help the broadband. But we've got a pretty active, between the RMCs here in Henry County, 9 Star in Hancock County, New Lisbon Telephone, they've actively been trying to provide broadband to
get it
rural
filled
Indiana.
in.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I don't want to do anything that hurts them. And I think the one bill that's coming this way kind of paints the RMCs out of the picture altogether. So we'll have to look at that.
Wow, interesting. Yeah. What does what could you do in the state house to ensure that people get rural broadband? Like what would you do besides starting I guess that you could take it to the extreme and have a municipal internet provider, or do you provide subsidies to people who want to internet providers who want to expand, like MetroNet would want to expand out to the county? What would be the plan for that?
Well, we just need to take the rules and regulations away so they can provide. I mean, part of the problems is the rules we put in place. I know New Lisbon has taken broadband to the Louisville area.
Yep.
And trying to go south of there. The RMCs over in Hancock County have been pretty active about getting it in the Knightstown rural areas. So, and this bill, I haven't read the bill that's coming out of there yet, but the state's going to lease the state right-of-ways. They're going to put in culverts that has room for so many lines, and they're going to lease those lines out. But
Okay.
I don't want that to interfere with what New Lisbon and 9 Star are already doing in our county.
Impede on their business.
Yeah.
Yeah, that wouldn't be any good.
The final things we had on the list for stuff that was going through the legislature, I guess, was the township consolidation deal. Is that, and we could talk about county government in general, because the Kernan Shepherd report came out 10 years ago or something like that, and they originally had come along saying that they wanted to eliminate commissioners and have one county executive, and either was it eliminate township governments and now this was kind of a halfway where you had to have a certain population in a township, basically. Do you think there's an appetite for that, or is it just going to be kind of as it is, and this is, the government we have is the way we're configured is what it's going to be?
Well, I don't legislate by polls, but, we send out those yearly questionnaires, and it was over 70% of the people polled in my district don't want one county commissioner. They prefer it the way it is. They didn't want the elimination of the townships either. And like I say, I think township government is the closest to the people. Are there problems there? Yeah. Do we need 3 advisory board members? I mean, all they do is approve the township budget. So who's to say that budgetary process couldn't be given to the county council to approve those budgets?
They meet about twice a year, right? A township advisory board.
Twice a year. They approve. It all has to do with the budget. But if Franklin Township had to consolidate, we'd have consolidated with Spiceland or Dublin, or would we come and consolidate with Nancy Markham here in Henry County? I don't know that the service would have been any better for those people. And a trustee makes $2,500 or $5,000 a year. It really bugs those people in Indianapolis at the state chamber that they actually do business at their kitchen table. I don't have a problem with that.
I read the statute today because we're playing the political director for Mr. Dakota Davis over here, trying to figure out what a township trustee does. You've got about 15 or 16 responsibilities, and I guess there's all kinds of different townships. You've got a township, Center Township in Indianapolis falls under the same rules as Dudley Township does. So you can have private offices and all of this stuff that goes into township government. In certain,
their biggest responsibility in our area of the state is fire protection. They're the people that fund the volunteer fire departments. And, it's not so much the money I think they have trouble with around here anymore. It's trying to find the people who volunteer to be a firefighter.
Manning up the volunteer fire departments,
But, I was one of the people that fought to try to kill this bill. But I used to represent Randolph County, and there's a trustee in particular over there that I've had 3 or 4 complaints on, because people still call me because they think I represent that area. What we were getting ready to do wasn't going to solve that problem at all. That trustee has not had a fire contract for 2 years. He was, he had a complaint on Canadian thistles. You're not supposed to grow those.
Canadian thistles?
Canadian thistles.
Why are you banning that?
The farmer would tell you they get in his crop, don't they? Yeah. So if he complains to Dakota that you're the trustee that those Canadian thistles are infesting his field, you're supposed to send a letter to Jeremiah giving him so many days to cut them. If you don't do it, Jeremiah or Dakota has them cut, and you bill it to his property taxes. Well, this trustee's had several complaints. He won't do it. That taxpayer even went to court, and the judge ruled the trustee to cut the Canadian thistles. He still hasn't done it. So there I got a guy that's not doing the job he's supposed to do. He hadn't had a fire contract in 2 years, but consolidating those townships wasn't going to affect him at all.
Because he's big enough that it doesn't matter. He's over the 1,200 person.
Yeah, he was over 1,200. So we weren't. So maybe there needs to be some changes made. I'm not disputing that, but I don't think the bill that was proposed was the answer to the problem.
Yeah, it was kind of ugly. Whenever I read through it, I didn't appreciate some of the wording. I guess that was the best way to put it.
So we're getting to that point in the show where we probably ought to start wrapping stuff up. Is there anything, Tom, that we've left out that you wanted to work in as far as issues that you're passionate about, or things that we've glossed over, or we needed to talk about that you're?
No, I don't take the job for granted. I appreciate the honor that the people of the district have given me over the past 22 years, and there's an election coming up in May. My name's going to be on the ballot. If you think I've done a decent enough job, I'd appreciate the consideration again. And, I keep a landline, so I'm in the phone book. So if anybody wants to get a hold of me, they know how to do it.
It's easier to find you, too, because that phone book is getting thinner and thinner. Now you just open it up, and there's like 5 people in there, and Tom's in there.
Yeah, and I could gladly get rid of that landline, because what's it cost me? $25
I heard a fun fact today that more people have an Amazon Prime account than they do a landline.
Wow, that's crazy. Yeah, I mean, I can rip a phone book in half now. It doesn't take a person.
And I'm a weekend. I probably could too.
Well, when I came, I got to be the age to get a cell phone. I lived in Rush County, so I've got a Rushville cell phone number, and I will for the rest of my life. I'll never have a landline, but I'll always come up like I'm from Rushville, Indiana.
Yep.
Just because that's, we're millennials. We'll never have landlines.
Every time you call, it says Jeremiah Morrell, Rushville, Indiana.
Well,
that's not right.
I've always been pretty comfortable voting the way I vote, because the constituency here is not embarrassed to tell me how they feel. Whether I'm standing at the gas pump or I'm in the grocery store. The joke was they never sent me in for a loaf of bread or a gallon of milk really quick, because somebody was going to stop me and talk to me. Or taking my wife to dinner. I mean, I was even standing at my father's casket at his calling, and somebody was lobbying me on an issue. So, but that's part of the job.
You saw some of that with the speaker, with Facebook junk going on too, where people really don't know boundaries.
Yeah, and they went to
some
his
of the
church.
stuff.
They were at his church the other day and protesting at his church. That's not a way to make friends.
No, and
that's not.
Yeah, I think I've given this speech about 5 times on this show now about how to talk to somebody in your position, and how to. You want to be respectful,
right.
and even like Representative Wesco, who's one of the most Christian conservative, far right. He was involved with RIFRA when that came along, and he was getting slammed a month or 2 ago by the pro-life people that were mad at him. And if you're mad at that guy,
oh my gosh, that was crazy.
Well, we've had the abortion issues been floating around the legislature. I don't believe it's going anywhere, but there's been people in the hall with their placards and their pictures, and that's fine. But when they stand out there with their megaphones and they scream and yell, and they got signs where they're personally taking on a particular member, that's not helping their issue at all.
No, I get that. I mean, this is just me personally. I feel that way about so many different issues. Kind of like the wind issue here, especially with it's just been so polarizing.
Yeah.
It's been crazy. I'm at the point where I'm just tired of hearing about it. And just people get so angry at one another over it, and it drives me crazy, to be honest.
And people don't seem to be as kind as they used to be. If we got time for this story, a couple of years ago, I came home at lunch, and I get my emails. I do emails, and 150, and I'm sitting there reading, and this one had come in at 11:57 at night, and it was the nastiest email I'd ever gotten. And him and his church was fed up with me. They were going to throw my ass out and blah, 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 blah. Well, he didn't sign it, but it had an address on it. I thought, well, he lives between Knightstown and Dunreath on Old 40. So I printed off the email. I drove to his house. I did back into the driveway in case I had to get away quickly. And I knocked on his door, and he came to the door, and I said, "Are you Mr. So-and-so?" "Yes, I am." And I said, "Well, I'm Tom Saunders. I got your email right here. You're angry, and we need to talk." Where do you live?" And I said, 10 miles down the road from you. And I said, "I know it's really easy to sit in front of a computer screen at 11:57 at night and shoot this off the cyberspace and think nobody ever reads it, but I read it, and I take the job pretty seriously." And I said, and what he was complaining about was when we was bailing out the banks, and it was all federal stuff. And I said, if you want to jump on me about education and road funding and property taxes, ditches, you go right ahead. But I said, I didn't do this, and I'm not taking the blame for this. Matter of fact, I agree with you on most of your issues. "Well, where do you live again?" And, but I'm going to go tell my church you came to see me. And, so it's that one-on-one sometimes that you have to take. They tell me in Indianapolis, you shouldn't do that. But first of all, nothing shuts them up like a knock on the door. So, but I've enjoyed my time. I like to help people, and it's unfortunate that you have to use the title sometime, but it does open doors. It does fixes problems, and I try to do that.
So you mentioned the road funding thing. It's pothole season, so my friend Rob Kendall he's on WIBC, and he's crying about potholes and how you guys, we passed the tax, so they should all be fixed.
Well, yeah, it
y'all are
takes
getting
a while,
some heat,
though.
yeah.
Well, we pass the tax. We don't fix the roads. I mean, but that was the number one issue for the years I've been in the legislature. The roads of Henry County were always the number one issue. It wasn't jobs, it wasn't education, it was roads. And about 20 years ago, or 15, we increased the road funding 3 cents. And I amended it a nickel to make it 7, and it didn't pass. And I said, they're going to be just as mad at me over 7 cents as they are 3 cents, and we're not going to do this for another 15 years, so let's do it. Well, they didn't do it. But I voted for the tax increases last year, but Henry County is going to get almost $1 million in new revenue.
Oh my gosh, just this summer and fall time with all of the road construction. I know that we've talked about it here before, but I drive a lot for my job along 38, and it was like going east out of Newcastle on 38, it was blocked, and then Broad Street was blocked, and then Hagerstown, the part of 38 was blocked. I felt like I was getting closed in, so it's like you get aggravated at first. Like, it's super easy to get really aggravated when you do that on a daily basis. Yeah. Then at the same time, it's like, well, I've been complaining about this road for the entire time I've been driving it, and now finally something's getting done, so I should probably shut up.
Well, but what you're talking about two different sides. There's the NDOT side, which is 38, right, 234, and the work you've seen in Hagerstown and 3. Yeah. But then you're also talking about Henry County government will have $1 million to spend.
Yeah.
And then there was I know the city of Newcastle applied, and I guess they're going to have another opportunity, but the city of Newcastle has been trying to seek some state matching grants as well for their city paving projects.
And I don't think they qualified.
Yeah, I don't know what happened, but we were at a county council meeting or city council meeting, and there was a big blow up between the council and the mayor over not how in the world it didn't work out or what happened. But I live just on the edge. I live in Henry Township, but not in the city of Newcastle, living in White Estates. But I drive Main Street and Riley Road every day, so as soon as they get that sorted out, I'm going to be a happy camper too.
Unfortunately, you had to have a road plan in place, and Henry County was lucky enough they had one, and that qualified them for a grant program. Unfortunately, the city didn't have it. That's my understanding.
They didn't have it yet. I know I've seen a map, or maybe they have one
They can
subsequently.
reapply this year. But you talked about 38. Be careful what you wish for, because the people that own the RV park about 5 or 6 years ago approached me and said they needed a turn lane. So I contact NDOT and say, can we do something to help them? And the next thing I know, we're tearing down houses and cutting hills, and I'm going, what's going on? They go, well, you asked for it.
It takes 5 or 6 years to put it in plans, too.
But I didn't know we were going to take people's homes. That's
I didn't realize homes went away for that.
Yeah, we took some front yards. I think we might have taken one house, but the people weren't happy. But we did take a hill out where a couple of people had gotten killed. So
they did a beautiful job. It looks great through there now.
Yeah.
So nice turning lane.
I'm not used to being able to drive through there again. I went all last summer not being able to go down 38 to the west.
Well, I'm not happy that it's taken so long downtown 38. I mean, those businesses struggle the way it is without taking away their business for 9 months.
Unfortunately, it has taken a little bit longer, but it'll be it'll give our Broad Street a much needed facelift, and it's gonna be a lot better to drive on. And it's really easy to complain, like I said before, but it's gonna be a really good thing.
I'm pretty optimistic it'll be worth it. Once they get it done.
City Councilman Aaron Dickin wants to know about 14th Street in Newcastle.
You gonna open that up? Are we opening that straight up?
Oh man,
Tom's blaming you. We started talking about the roads, and the comments are coming in fast. Shocking, isn't it? It's like daylight saving time and putting Pete Rose in the Hall of Fame.
I have to tell the story. I made friends with former Governor Wickham down in Rome, Indiana, which is right on the Ohio River. And I called him the first time, and I said, "Can I come join you for lunch?" It takes 5 hours to drive there. I mean, if you walk 100 feet out his back door, you're in the Ohio River. I pulled up in front of his door right at noon. And he's sitting on the front porch in his pajamas, and his girlfriend at the time, and he's 90 years old, and she's 80, and she's sitting there barefooted. And I thought, they're having company. And so I get out, and we introduce ourselves, and they excuse herself to go get dressed. And he comes back and visits, and we go in and sit down for lunch. And Evelyn goes, you got here an hour earlier than you were expected. And I said, you said noon. And she said, honey, we're on slow time. And the governor had the spoon to his mouth, and he said, you can blame your man Mitch for that. I vetoed that damn bill when I was governor.
Oh, that's good. That's rich.
Well, very good. Well, thanks for joining us, Tom. If people want to track you down, you got the Facebook page now. I beat you the last time I visited you. I said you got to get a Facebook page.
And Patrick's helping me with that, so you guys are going to have to. Yeah,
I think we wondered if it was Patrick. The last whenever
my wife Facebooks.
When I saw,
they want us to tweet. No, I do well to. I'm sorry, I do well to read my emails, and I try to get back to them. And
when I saw that one of the first pictures he put up was you standing in front of a race car, I had a feeling Patrick had something to do with it.
Was that me or my dad? I can't remember.
No, it's in the State House. I think donor a sprint car. I think.
Yeah, well, I am a member of the motorsports caucus, and we've been able to bring some money to Henry County to help out the racetrack down there, and there are other racetracks around the state we're trying to promote. And I'd like to see a new hotel down there and some restaurants and.
Well, you got one really nice restaurant down there, but the hotel. I'm getting married in July, and I've got a whole lot of out of town guests, and it's
tough.
It's tough to say. Well, we got Steve Alford, and there's a real nice hotel in Muncie they built, and there's about 3 campgrounds if y'all want to bring a camper. Yeah. It's not easy.
I'm going to stay out of that conversation. But you're talking about Montgomery's now?
Montgomery, yes.
I think that there are so many.
Montgomery's been excellent for hosting us, and after I got engaged, we went to Montgomery's.
There's a lot of different, really interesting rabbit holes that we could take so many of these conversations down.
Well, and I have my own little economic development plan that nobody ever heard about, but when John Montgomery came to town, he needed assistance. I was able to help him, and he credits me with that. And if you go to Willie and Red's in Hagerstown, they needed help, and I was able to help them. And if you go to Warm Glow Candle over there on 70, which used to be in my district, they were going to move to Ohio because they needed water and sewage, and there wasn't any. And the state was getting ready to build a new rest stop, and they were going to put in their own solid waste system. And I said, well, this is kind of silly when Centerville needs to enlarge theirs. Can't we come together? So I was able to put those together, and they were able to stay and enlarge the facility there. So those are things that I do. My mother always told me not to beat my own drum, but as a politician,
when you're running for re-election, you need to, right?
Kind of pat yourself on the back. So I'm pretty proud that those places are here.
Yeah, very good. If you can just get White Estates tied into some sort of sewer, so I'm not polluting the Big Blue River.
But it may cost you. That's going to be your problem.
I'm nervous about the invoice. Well, thank you very much for hanging out with us, Tom. We, when we had dinner at the State House a couple weeks ago, you said, I know you had Melanie Wright on, and I got beat into having my own representative on the show, so I'm glad we made it work.
Sorry, I didn't mean to hold the gun to you.
That's all right. We'll have you on again.
Okay,
We're going to get you up to where you're the most commonly occurring state representative on the show, right?
There we go.
Got to have you on at least one more time.
Oh, thanks.
Any more final thoughts, Kade?
Tom, I think we touched earlier on the CAFOs. I know when we had this episode planned, I had a lot of people message me, and a lot of farmers and stuff in the area say, hey, could you maybe bring some of these issues up? We'd like to talk to him. And I said, yeah, sure, I'll do everything I can to talk to him. And I know one thing that's going to be a big issue here coming up, like Dakota said earlier, has been the wind issue. I think that's one thing, probably our listeners tonight, if you could just maybe touch on wind in Henry County as far as that goes and surrounding counties. I mean, is that an idea that you're just completely opposed to, or is that something that you just think needs further regulation?
I think, again, it's about being a good neighbor and location. When I mentioned earlier that Trump invited us to the White House, and I'm standing outside the White House, and I've got Ed Yanis on one side of me, and I got Butch Baker on the other side of me, and a county commissioner from northern Indiana walks up and says, "Oh, Tom, your ears should have been burning yesterday." And I said, "Why is that?" And he said, "Well, they're telling me you're anti-wind." And Ed goes, "I'm leaving." And I said, "No, you're not." And I grabbed a hold of his arm, and I said, "I'm not anti-wind." I said, "You come from a county of 8,100 people. Perfect location." I said, "But they're starting to move into heavily populated areas. Maybe not the best location. It's all about where you put them." And, I get beat up. All I was trying to do with my legislation was saying and I'm not asking them to do anything. I'm not the same requirements I have to do in Indianapolis. If I'm to vote on a bill and I could make a profit, I have to abstain from the vote and not participate in the conversation. So all I was trying to do was say the same thing went for any county official or appointed official of the county. And I'm not accusing anybody of any wrongdoing, but the perception out there is maybe we're not looking out for the best interest of the county. So that's all I was trying to do. Yesterday, Apex came to visit me at the State House. They had 10 people, which I thought was kind of overkill.
Your office isn't that big.
No, we had to go to another office because they had so many people. And I said, "All I'm asking you to do as a wind company," and they said, "Well, we should have come to see you 2 years ago." And I said, "Yeah, you should have," is to say, we're looking to do business, let's say in Henry County. As you gather your leases, you don't keep them in your pocket till you get them all done and then file them in the courthouse. You advertise you want to do business here. You file your leases as you get them. That way the public can have the conversation until really at the point they're doing it now, it's too late. They've already got their leases. We're already pitting people against each other. I had no setback language in my bill. It was just, and really, the law already exists that if you're a county commissioner or council or member of the planning commission and you're going to make an income, you're supposed to abstain from the votes. And I know they've been asked to do it, but there's really no teeth in it that says if you don't do it, you get fined $1,000 or what. So,
All right.
I appreciate that. Yeah. Good points. So, and like I said, this is going to be a big issue. I know with the local elections coming up, a lot of local spots are kind of up for grabs, and this is kind of one of those issues that's really going to kind of take hold as far as that goes. And I'm sure we'll have a lot of those people in your seat too, coming up here this year. So it'll be interesting to get a word from everybody, and everybody can kind of put something in on that.
But I'm also, if somebody wants to talk, I'm available. We had a hearing at Tri-High a couple years ago on an issue, and once again, I said I wasn't going to say anything, but I did. I gave my good neighbor speech, and after it was over, some of the farmers got around me and, "Why don't you just put a blankety-blank D behind your name and get it over with?" And I said, this isn't a Democrat or Republican issue. You can't say it's a political issue.
Mm-hmm.
And, as I said before, in my position, it's a no. I mean, I'm going to make some people happy and some people mad.
Mm-hmm.
And so.
A good compromise will leave nobody happy. So,
but then the rules are fair.
Yeah.
If nobody's happy, most of the time the rules are fair.
Yeah, no, I
That's
appreciate
very true.
the conversation on it, and like you said, if you ever need to talk to any local farmer in this area, I'm up for that too.
Okay.
So,
Kade's farm tour is ready to go.
yep.
Dakota, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I have a couple things that I've got written down here on my paper. First one that I want to touch on is I want to say thank you for Mr. Tom Saunders for coming out. I really appreciate it. It is Valentine's Day, so I have to give a shout out to my wife Audrey. She got me. She does listen to the podcast and heard me mention Jordan Peterson on last week's show, and she got me his new book, 12 Rules for Life, and I'm super excited to read it. I wanted to put that plug in there for her. And the next thing, I'm still trying to get Mayor York to come on the show.
Still efforting.
Yep, I think that I'm going to have to go down there.
I mean, if two state representatives will do it, you got to think the mayor of Newcastle will do it,
and a state senator.
and a state senator.
And I think that I'm going to have to go down there to the city council meeting Monday and have our calendar out and just have him sign it so that we have a commitment. And then another thing I want to point out is that it sounds like thanks to Young Americans for Liberty, Audrey and I are going to have the opportunity to go down to Houston and see Dr. Ron Paul give a lecture down there, which would be really awesome, and I really appreciate that opportunity. And then it sounds like Boss Hog of Liberty might be covering something about the United States Senate Republicans debate.
Yeah, you got the MS debate on Tuesday night, right?
Yeah, there's something about
You're
that.
like the traveling correspondent now, Dakota.
Yeah, we'll have to see it. We'll have to see how that goes. How did I get to be the traveling correspondent? I'm the only one that's between the two of us that's married.
I already bought tickets to the Henry County Soil and Water Conservation dinner night, so I don't want to lose that $10.
Well, but that's I think that those are my only 4 final thoughts. So.
All right. Well, very
Aaron
good.
Dickens said he'd give you a letter of recommendation for mayor.
Well, we have the proof, the photo evidence that during one of the council meetings he did write him that letter, right? He even signed it, "Love, Aaron."
It's on Tuesday. It's the same night as your there's the President's Day, so that there is no meeting Monday. It's Tuesday, so now you're double up. You can't go.
I can't do that.
It's tragic. All right. Well, thank you, Dakota and Kade and Tom for being here. Appreciate it very much. Valentine's Day. We appreciate everybody that spent the last hour and a half of your Valentine's Day watching us on the Facebook live stream. This is a great night. We've got more Boss Hog of Liberty next, I guess tomorrow, Thursday. We're going to do a call-in episode with Robin Miller, the racing journalist. I believe we're still scheduled for that, so that's exciting. And then we'll be back in our regular time slot on Thursday of next week. We appreciate you all listening, and we'll see you soon.